Hey folks, Alan Saunders with another episode of Steelers Morning Rush here on the Steelers Now YouTube channel. It is Wednesday, August 21st. The Pittsburgh Steelers have their second practice of the week at UPMC Rooney Sports Complex on the south side. I will be there for practice later, and then I'll have another episode here on the YouTube channel or wherever you find your podcast with Zachary Smith. Another Steelers afternoon drive coming up. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. If you're here on the YouTube platform, if you're on some other podcast channel, make sure you subscribe to our podcast, leave us a 5-star review. We don't want you to miss anything, and we appreciate every single piece of our audience so much. And today's show is going to be almost entirely about something that came from the audience from yesterday's show, which I really love. Yesterday, I talked about something very, not pretty niche, right? I talked about punting, about the Steelers. Sorry about that. About the Steelers punting and Cameron Johnston and whether, they were going to be better or whether they're actually be able to realize the advantage of having a big-legged punter. And audience member Varzak left an awesome comment. I want to read some of it, and then I want to kind of tell you a little bit about what I think I mentioned in that show yesterday about there's a Puntalytics website that uses EPA per play to measure how less bad every punter is because punts are bad, and that's life in the NFL. I really like this comment, though, and I want to read it. He said, I don't agree with analytics of anything to do with football. The sport isn't as measurable as baseball is. A punt or any type of play can't be measured accurately. You have too many people dependent on the play to succeed. The defense, who's on the roster, who has a complete say in how successful it will be. You have weather, penalties, injuries, players taking off plays, player and coaching, football IQ, positional strengths and weaknesses, on and on. Baseball is between a pitcher and a catcher, two guys who can easily be measured, especially if they face each other a lot. Now you're taking two players to make it 22. And then it goes on to say, the only thing math and football can do is spot trends. It doesn't project outcomes. I think that's why I think PFF is full of it. There's a lot more there. It's on the full comments on yesterday's video if you want to read it. I really appreciate this. As someone who has covered baseball and hockey in the past, I watched both of those sports kind of go through a statistical and analytical revolution, and now a second one where we have not just math, but we have better data, right? We started with better math in baseball, and started with, hey, like this batting average thing doesn't make sense. Like let's look at some other things here, and how much is a double is worth more than a single, and a walk is worth almost as much as a single, and they should be included differently than the way on base percentage and slugging percentage we're capturing them. And we came up with new math, right? So we came up with things like weighted runs created or something like that. And then in baseball we got better data. We got StatCast, so we got pitch speed and spin and bat speed and ball speed off the bat and home run distance and sprint speed of baseball players and distance covered for fielders. And now we have all kinds of stuff for baseball to create even new and better math. And now you have expected batting average, right? Like this ball hit to this location, that speed, that spin is hit 82% of the time. So we can very, very accurately say, like, oh, you just got unlucky or whatever. It was a great play by the defense. Yes, you can't talk about, and I loved that happening for those sports. I enjoyed covering it. I enjoyed participating in it. I think it works. It works for those, even hockey, which is a lot more interconnected than baseball. I think, some of them, when you really break them down, like what is this statistic trying to tell me? It makes a lot of sense, right? We had plus minus in hockey, very similar to having batting average in baseball. It was a statistic that was easy to chart, easy to track, but it didn't really make a lot of sense, right? We've all seen a hockey play where you step off your own bench and you get scored on. You're like, oh, well, I didn't do anything to earn that minus, or exactly the same way the other way. And then when you start to think about like what goals are pretty random, right? I mean, a good shooter in the NHL scores on 10% of his shots. So then you move into, well, okay, if we say that a good shooter is going to score 10% of the shots, then maybe we should really be tracking shots and not goals. And then when you think about, okay, well, what's a good shot? Like if I hit the post, that doesn't count as a shot, but that's a lot better shot than hits the goalie in the center of the chest. So really, maybe we'll just track shot attempts because even a rebound can be a good play. And that's how you get to something like Corsi, and then you go on from there. In football, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to have the same level of statistical sureness when you're talking about 22 guys in the field. There's a lot going on. There's no question about it. And it's one of the reasons that I really dislike what PFF generally presents to the world, because part of it is, I don't think they do a lot of science behind a lot of what they're doing. There isn't a lot of science. There's a lot of math behind what they're doing. A lot of it's just opinion dressed up like it with the sheen of science in front of it. And the other part of it is that they're so damn sure about themselves when they really shouldn't be. There should be a lot of uncertainty about what we think about football analytics because of the number of moving parts and the lack of hardcore science behind a lot of the things that we're talking about. Like we should not think we know things. That there is not a level of knowledge of football analytics that I think in most areas really is elevated to anywhere near an equivalent to what you see in other sports. I do think there are things that football analytics can be useful for. And we are starting to get some of that data, that better data that the baseball players got. Now we know sprint speed of every NFL player. We know how open wide receivers are because we can track the physical separation between them and defensive backs. That's not really analytics. That's just better data, right? And we have that now. We know how hard quarterbacks throw. We can learn all these things based on the player tracking data that we have. And that's not even really analytics. That's just better data. That's better inputs. But one of the analytics that I think is very worth paying attention to, and it's because it does not really separate the player from the team, and that's expected points added per play, or EPA per play. You'll hear me talk about it fairly regularly, but I don't think I've ever explained what it does or why I like it. So I figure I'll give, let's see. I'll give a couple more minutes to that. I'm now 6 minutes into this. But EPA per play is calculating based on 50 years of the NFL, how likely you are to score given the down distance and situation. So, how often do I score 1st and 10 on the 20-yard line? And also, how often am I more likely to be the next team to score? And what kind of points are there? So 1st and 1 at the 1, I'm more likely to score a touchdown than a field goal. But 4th and 2 at the 38, I'm probably more likely to score a field goal than a touchdown. And I'm probably at 4th and 2 at my own 38, not likely to score at all. And it is able to calculate, basically an expected number of points for every possible situation, every down, distance, and yard line on the field. And then you can calculate how much the team gained by moving from point A to point B. So if it's 1st and 10 at our own 20, we have a certain expected points. These are the average number of points you score on a 1st and 10 drive at your own 20-yard line. If we throw in a 75-yard pass on the first play, and now it's 1st and 5 at the 5, now we can calculate how many points the average team scores on 1st and 5 at the 5, the difference, and we can assign a value to that play. And we can say that play was worth so much. Now, to the players involved, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I mean, it could have been a slant and the corner fell down, and nobody really did anything especially difficult, and they got 75 yards, and great, good us. Doesn't mean that those players did anything special. But when you're talking about a punt, you can you're basically evaluating the team's situation before and after the punt, and you can very easily calculate how the team did. Now, like you're saying, that's not all on the punter. There's all these parts. In fact, my whole point was that it's not all on the punter, that you have to cover it well. And the return, the skill of the return man, and the skill of the blockers, and the weather, and all this other stuff. Yeah, there's a lot going into it. But when you're talking about over the course of a season or over the course of a career, you can pretty well suss out through those numbers who good punters are and bad punters are, because the good ones are going to consistently be good, even with those other variables around them, and the bad ones are going to consistently be bad, even with those other variables around them. The punter probably has the most say of any piece of that process, even if it's not all of it. So I like that measure that we talked about yesterday. And in general, things that are about EPA and derived from EPA, I think are based in good science and are things that can be worth paying attention to when you're talking about for an entire team or for an entire unit. It's not going to tell you anything or very much about very specific players. So I think that's a good starting point if you don't know a lot about NFL analytics and you want to get into them, or you want to learn more. I think that's a good way to start. I think it's a good team-based measure that generally is not going to lead you too far astray. It's not going to tell you everything, but if you want to know whether a coach should have gone for it on 4th down, or he should have punted, or whether you should kick a field goal or go for it, or what are the right times to try an onside kick or whatever. You can use those as a good guideline. But I've talked to coaches and they will tell me also, all that is about average, and average is a good place if you want like statistical bulwarking for your decision. But also, a good coach will know where his team is better and worse than average. A good coach will know that, hey, we're not very good at punting. Maybe we should go for it on fourth down. A good coach will know I have a great field goal kicker who's awesome under pressure, and he can make this from 58. A good coach will know that we have this trick onside kick we've been working on for a long time that we're sure is going to work. So it doesn't matter if it's not a great play statistically. This is a good play for our team right now. And I think a lot of people miss that too. There was a comment yesterday about how Mike Tomlin's not a very good in-game coach. I think Mike Tomlin is an in-game coach that does not generally subscribe to the common orthodoxy. I think Mike Tomlin is very good at understanding what his team is good and bad at. And I've seen him have good games and bad games like most coaches, but I think he is better than most at understanding his team's strengths and weaknesses. And I think probably actually overvalues his team's strengths and weaknesses compared to what you should do with an average team. I think I just wanted to kind of explain what I feel about NFL analytics, why you're going to hear me both reference analytics on this YouTube channel and also trash talk some people on this YouTube channel from time to time who I think deserve it. So hope that helps. If you have any questions, leave them. If you want to know more about this stuff, certainly we'll try to continue the conversation. And if you're sick of hearing about it, I promise I'll probably wait at least a week until I talk about it again. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you a little bit later.